Hi, everybody. This is Alan Peterson with Meet the Thriller Author. And in this episode, I have Toni Dwiggins. Toni, how are you?
I am good. I am suffering in the heat with a sore, raspy throat, so I have to apologize for that. Otherwise, good.
Yeah, we're not used to this heat in Northern California, are we?
No. I'm a weather wimp, big time, but making it through.
Okay, that's good. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
The basics. I live in Northern California. I'm married. I have 2 grown daughters. Have the obligatory cat. Let's see, beyond that, going a little bit deeper, just about me, I guess I would call myself mostly a pragmatic person. I go through my day with a practical problem-solving approach. That is, when I don't get riled up about the state of the world, but no worries, I'm not going to wade into that here. I also have a goofy streak. I love puns. I feel affection for goofy-looking animals like pelicans, and they're actually extraordinarily well-designed, else they wouldn't have lasted 100 million years. But I'm quite fond of their goofy-looking appearance and their amazing abilities to fly and dive. I wish I lived at the beach where I could watch them every morning. Instead, I live here having a view of Silicon Valley. In fact, I like to start my day with a little ritual. I look out at the world. I get a cup of coffee, I go out on the deck, and I say, "Hey, world, it's nice to be here." And then I pose a question. I picked this up at some point, and I decided it was a good idea. It's actually a rather daunting question. I'm out there with my coffee, I look at the world, and I ask myself, is this going to be a good day or a bad day? I'm not talking about if it's a beach day or a dentist day. Rather, it's more or less, what can I make of this day? I don't know if that's pragmatic or metaphysical, but that's my little ritual.
That sounds like a good way to start the day. I'll get you right in the right mind thought.
Yeah. I don't know, and it doesn't always lead to the best answer. Sometimes, this day is going to suck, and it does. but mostly it's a good way to get in the right mindset. Yeah.
And so, how long have you been writing?
Oh gosh, more years than I can count. I started way back when. I wrote some magazine stuff, articles, short stories. Then I ended up writing for a publishing company. Long story short, I ended up being brought in to write a high school history textbook. Working with some specialists, some experts in the field, but I did the actual writing, which was just so much fun. I found out I loved research, I loved history, which is a story. From there, after I kind of finished doing that, I wrote not just the history textbook. I ended up writing bits and pieces, earth science textbooks, actually. That kind of turned my head somewhat to geology. I write a forensic geology series for the listeners who don't know. And then, let's see, I went from the textbook stuff to deciding I wanted to be a novelist and started writing long-form fiction. And here I am.
Is the reason you started to write thrillers is that were you a fan of thrillers as a reader, or why exactly did you start writing thrillers?
Yeah, you've definitely been a fan ever since I was a kid, Nancy Drew, all that kind of stuff. But, I'm going to have to expand the definition for me beyond just thrillers. My stuff is, I guess I'd call it mystery thrillers. My stuff is a mashup of forensic mystery and thriller and outdoor adventure. I guess if I break it down, the mystery part appeals to my interest in problem solving, to be challenged and surprised and confused, as long as I can figure out the answer, the mystery. And then the thriller, it is really cool because I think thrillers bring us to extremes where choices lead to life and death consequences, a wild ride, but some really serious stuff sometimes, a cool way to play out moral choices. See, the outdoor adventure part I really like, partly because I like to spend a lot of time doing outdoorsy things. It's fun, and there are a lot of ways to get in trouble. And I have to admit here to a guilty pleasure watching this old TV show called Man vs. Wild. This guy, Bear Grylls, gets himself into really gnarly situations in the wild, and he has to survive. And, I'm there, vicariously, but I'm there.
It looks like there's a new show now where they just drop people out in the wilderness. I don't know how true it is, but I saw a commercial. It sounds very interesting. They basically really drop them off with nothing. It's like Extreme Survivor.
I'll have to check that one out because I think I've seen all the Men vs. Wilds.
Yeah. So now your series is so unique with the forensic geology angle. How did all that come to be, and what gave you the idea to I want people to write about this?
I kind of told you about how my writing evolved. I also, ever since I was a kid, I like to pick up pick up rocks that looked interesting, kind of like a bird with shiny things. Ooh, that's interesting. I'm going to pick that up. As I ended up writing about some earth science subjects, I got more interested in the actual science of it, the geology. When I was trying to think of what would be a great subject for a book, for a novel, I thought, well, I'm interested in geology, but I don't know how to do that. I came across a textbook about forensic geology, and I had never heard of it. I thought, this is so cool. These are scientists. They're using earth material at crime scenes or scenes of calamities, and they're actually kind of like following that to solve the crimes. So I thought that sounded interesting. And so I had that. And so for the first book, even though Quicksilver is currently the first of my series, Bad Water was the first I wrote. And I came to that. I was looking through some of my old photos of just various outdoor trips, and I came across photos of Death Valley. And I thought, well, there's a place to set a story. Mm. So I did some research, and I found out that on the perimeter of that national park, there was once a radioactive waste dump. And so I thought, okay, now I've got my theme, my place, and that kicked it off.
So it's actually inspired on kind of real things out there that actually happened.
Yeah, I do that a lot. I mean, I go through newspapers or stories I hear, like the bird with the shiny thing, and I pluck things out and put them in my file. But I do use real life experiences. Like for Bad Water, for instance, here's a little anecdote. I was hiking in this slot canyon and by myself in a very narrow, twisty canyon in Death Valley, and I heard this huge roar coming from up canyon. And of course, my first thought was flash flood, because that's a danger there. I'm looking at the sky and it's blue, but I'm still kind of thinking, it could be raining further up in the watershed. And I was beginning to think, what should I do? There's no place to run. And then the roar gets louder, and I look up canyon, and around the corner comes this amazing black whirlwind. I mean, it was this little whirlwind, dust and pebbles, and it looked and acted like it was alive. It just came whipping around that corner. It came straight toward me. I plastered myself against the canyon wall, thinking, oh my gosh. It almost touched me, but it didn't. It just zipped by me, and then it went down to the end of the section I was in, took the next turn in the canyon without even a pause, and off it went. Better believe I used that in Bad Water. So, and then for my volcano book, I used to ski in that area as a kid up at Mammoth Lakes is the name of the town. And it turned out, I didn't know it at the time, I was skiing and soaking in a hot springs, and it was part of a huge volcanic caldera. And when I learned that, I remembered my experience. I thought, okay, here's another great story.
Yeah, and now with Skeleton Sea, it was kind of interesting because when it first came out, I was like, oh, I didn't put the two and two of geology and the ocean, but there's so many rocks down there.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of rock down there. Yeah, I mean, the geologists do have to do that. Although I had to learn a lot of marine science to write that one, which is one of the great things I love about the books I'm doing, and one of the things that makes me so slow is I get interested in a subject, and then I have to research it, and I have to learn the science, and I'm somewhat persnickety about trying to get that right. So then I have to search out an expert in whatever I'm writing about, learn and so on. But it's so interesting.
And who are some of your favorite thriller authors, and have they influenced your writing today?
The usual suspects are like Preston and Child. They write these exciting kind of science-based thrillers. Jeffrey Deaver writes forensic mysteries. I love his attention to the science, the mystery, and the storytelling that goes with that science. My all-time favorite mystery thriller writer, who is just spectacular writer, is James Lee Burke.
Oh yeah.
His stories are just incredible. His settings are so alive. You're there. His characters are alive, sometimes scarily so. The crimes at the heart of his stories are so unsettling, and they raise the kind of questions that really stick with the reader. I am always in awe of what he does. If I could even come in the neighborhood of getting a story to work the way he does, I would be absolutely happy.
Yeah, he's amazing, and his name has come up a few times with the other podcasts. So he's very influential to a lot of us.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I
Yeah.
cool. Well, yeah. I mean, he is. He's a giant.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too. Even like you mentioned, like we're going way back when growing up. You mentioned Nancy Drew. They those have come up too. Like, and same thing with me. I was the Hardy Boys, and it's just
Oh yeah.
it's so interesting.
Yeah, I read some Hardy Boys too. I wasn't just reading the females. I was reading the males
Yeah,
too.
no, I read Nancy Drew too because I had a sister. So
Ah, there you go.
she had the Nancy Drews. And then my brother had I'm the youngest, so I got all the hand me downs, and my brother had the Hardy Boys. So I read them both.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess they kicked us all off.
Yeah, exactly. It's so interesting. Do you still find time to read thrillers, or do you try not to? Do you worry that if you're reading thrillers, it's gonna influence your writing or anything like that?
No. I don't worry about it too much because I don't know why I don't worry about it. I just don't. Yeah, I do. I mean, it's yeah. I like to read the kind of stuff I like to write. So I guess I read a lot of mystery thrillers. I also like literary fiction. I will read that. I like biographies. I don't read romance. Just it's just not my cup of tea. But yeah, I guess mysteries and thrillers and literary and then nonfiction, especially when it pertains to the story I'm trying to write. In fact, I'm just starting to read this book called Down the Great Unknown. It's about John Wesley Powell's exploratory trip through the Grand Canyon back in the 1800s. He was the first white dude to explore the Grand Canyon. Fascinating stuff. So that's one of the places I'm considering sending my geologists in the next book. Fascinating story. Yeah, it's great stuff.
I have to check that out. I like this. I like those type of stories, especially those explorers way back when. I mean, that's some pretty gutsy people.
Yeah, well, this is a great. It's a great story of adventure of somewhat crazy people doing
Yeah.
The characters are indelible. I wish I could make up characters like that.
Yeah. So now you mentioned, like especially with the focus on forensics in your books. I mean, do you watch like TV shows like CSI, or do you not prefer to watch those? I wonder if pop culture and TV do they influence your writing and your novels?
I used to watch CSI, and I have to say here, and apologies to all CSI fans. Well, I guess because I have done so much research and worked with and talked to a lot of people in a real forensic situation. CSI, it just seems so kind of silly sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the show for a while and then I just didn't anymore. Yeah. Every once in a while I'll see a show with a forensic angle that I think really works. But you asked about what TV shows would influence my writing, and one thing that blew me away was Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. I didn't watch it when it was, first being broadcast. Watched it on Netflix, binge watched. And I don't know if you've seen it. Did you?
Yes, I love Breaking Bad. Yep.
I mean, it just blew me away. I think it's one of the best things I've ever seen on TV. It's a tutorial on character development, on reversals, on the old "you reap what you sow" lesson. I wish I could say that my stuff comes up to that level, but I certainly, aside from watching it just wrapped, I've learned a little bit. So I would like that to be an influence on my stuff.
Yeah, that is an incredible show. And yeah, like what you mentioned with CSI, I think they even have, I've read that they call it the CSI factor, where jurors now expect things like the TV show, and it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. So
exactly. I think that maybe that's one of the things that bugged me about it.
Yeah, it's just too over the top.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I'm all for drama. You got to do. I mean, with fiction, you got to do the drama. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to make something dry and boring. And well, this takes 18 weeks to discover this. Well, then okay, you do a time jump and you say, okay, 18 weeks later, I figured out what happened. Anyway, I have several geologists, both forensic and in other fields, who are kind enough to vet my work. And boy, they just they shake their fingers at me when I get it wrong.
That's awesome.
I try very hard to get it right.
So their experiences make it into your books and everything?
That's a great question. No, they haven't actually. I should go back to them and say, tell me some stories. I guess because each time when I have come to them, I have come with a story. Mm-hmm. The original one I approached was a forensic geologist, and I take it back. Yes, he I take it back. Let me go back to him. The first one I consulted with, who showed me around his lab, who was wonderful. And his lab was a wonder in itself. And so he told me some stories. I asked him, just tell me something about what you're doing and how it works. And he was working a case in which a suspect had sand caught in his pant cuffs. He was a suspect in a murder. And then my geologist's job was to find out if this sand actually came from the site of the murder or came from some other beach. He already hit. So the first thing he had to do was to find out if it was beach sand or inland desert dune sand and that sort of thing, which is kind of cool in and of itself. And so, he long story short, he showed me all the equipment he used to examine these grains of sand, and how he, in the end, was able to determine that, yes, indeed, the suspect was at the site, and they nailed the sucker. And then he went on to quote I think it's William Blake's poetry, to see a world in a grain of sand. I love this geologist who's all kind of hard nosed, and here's how I solved this, and nailed him. And then he's got this romantic.
Yeah, then he waxes philosophy.
Yeah, so I gave my one of my protagonists, Walter. I've got this. He's kind of the mentor of my geology team. I gave him a love of poetry. In fact, I used that quote in Skeleton Sea about to see a world in a grain of sand, which you actually can.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's like right out of that old TV show, The Forensic Files. Like, this is before all CSI. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but that sounds like that would have been right for that documentary.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
When you start to write, I know it's hard to describe a typical writing day. What's a writing day for you? What's it like?
Well, let's see. I start with that little. Usually, I'll start with that little ritual I described. I'll get my coffee and go out in the deck and say, "Hey, world," and pose my question. Then I'll have my coffee, read the newspaper. I read the newspaper for two reasons. It's habit. I like to get just an overview of what's going on. If I had the time and was willing, I'd subscribe to the New York Times, but I subscribed instead to the local rag. Anyway, in any case, I still get a mix of stories that I don't get online. Online, I have my news feed more tailored. Mm-hmm. But this time, in this case, I get more of a variety of things I wouldn't have thought to seek out. So I'll read the paper, have breakfast, and diddle around a bit, then go to work. I have a bad habit of getting on the net and checking various things first. I should probably leave that until the afternoon. I'm trying to break that bad habit. If I have any social networking kind of chores, things I need to do, reply to emails or line up promotions or that sort of thing, I'll do that. And I will, if research needs to be done, I'll do that. Then more writing and more coffee, and then I'll get up and walk around. And by the afternoon, I'm usually ready for a break. Most days I will take a very long walk. I live in the foothills, so I have lots of nice, challenging hills, so I can do a lot of up and down, get some exercise. I call them plot walks because more often than not, I set off with a question in my mind about how am I going to get my people into this kind of trouble or out of this kind of trouble, or what happens next. What does someone say?
Like a little recorder or a pad of paper in case you get a great idea when you're out in the foothills?
Yeah, I don't bring a recorder. I probably should. I bring paper and pencil.
Oh, cool.
And then I'll scribble it down. And then many times I come home and I kind of try to decipher what it was I wrote. But yeah. So that's my day. Then I'll come back, and then if I still have the will and the energy, I'll do some more writing, researching, networking, et cetera. And then vegging out.
And where do you usually write? Do you have a specific area that's set aside for writing?
I do. I'm fortunate. I have an area of the house that's my office with a great big window, and it looks out onto trees. My love of the outdoors is somewhat satisfied looking out the window. I don't see anything wildly exciting out there except for the occasional squirrel. Squirrel. It's nice. It's a nice setting. It's conducive to writing. My desk is covered with odds and ends, a lot of rocks, a lot of notes, photos, that sort of thing. So it's not a wildly different place. I imagine most writers' places would look more or less like mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yes, I'm the same way too. I like to open the shades and look outside, and then some black themselves into like they don't want to see the outside world. So it's kind of interesting the differences of different writers.
Yeah, I know. I've never tried writing like just in a room with no window, so I can't compare, but I don't like the idea.
Yeah.
I do like having that, just out of the corner of my eye sometimes, just to see the light and the greenery and the sky, et cetera, et cetera. I'm someone who does not write to music. I know a lot of people like to do that. I tried once because people kept saying how much it spurred their creativity. I don't know. I find if I turn on music that I like to listen to, I start listening to the music.
Yeah, we're the same. I'm the same way. I can't, because then I'll like, oh, I really like that song, and oh, what were the lyrics? Then I'll be googling the lyrics.
Right, right. No kidding.
So now, do you find that like in your books, does your own personality or experiences make it into your books, or no?
I mentioned those experiences in the canyon and skiing, and so those sorts of things definitely make it in. As far as my, let's see, my main protagonist, my POV protagonist, is a young woman, and so she's, she's got, there are enough similarities between us that I do. I give her, I give her this need for coffee. We can't start the day without it. She loves the outdoors. She's happier in boots or flip-flops and dressy shoes. On the other hand, she's younger, smarter, braver, gets in more trouble than I do. A funny thing, though, what's happened is occasionally she starts making her way into my life. I found myself using an adjective monumentally. I gave that to Cassie. Every once in a while she'll describe something as monumentally, whatever, irritating or interesting. Instead of saying very, she'll say that. I don't even know where I came up with it. Just kind of when she came alive, she started saying that. I never used to say it, and now every once in a while I'll be saying that. It's kind of like, okay, get out of my head. I use some real life experiences in my stories. It kind of bleeds back and forth. For instance, in Skeleton Sea, there's a scene where Cassie is kayaking in this area with a lot of jellyfish. Jellyfish play quite a big role in the book. Very, very deadly forms of the creatures. I had actually experienced kayaking in this place, so it was a real life place. I was out there alone kayaking, and I looked around, and it was just the water was full of jellyfish. It was overwhelming. I mean, I couldn't take a stroke without hitting a jellyfish, and I didn't want to do that, so I drifted. It was gorgeous. It was a little bit unsettling, and that's one of the things that got me interested in what's going on with that. In any case, so that led to a fictionalized scene of that, where bad things actually happen. And then just a couple of weeks ago, I was on vacation again at that place where this story is set. I was out there kayaking, and I'm going along, and there's this great big jellyfish. And so my first thought is, how can I use that to promote my book?
You take a picture?
I didn't have a camera. Darn, that would have been great.
Yeah, it's just like Cassie.
Yeah, exactly. She's saying, look out, you don't know what's going to happen up ahead. There are some wildly lethal jellyfish out there. In fact, this is a little tidbit that's in my book, is that the box jellyfish, who actually is in my book, I think he's on the 10 most deadly creatures list.
Oh, wow.
It's done by one of those suckers, and you have a good chance of dying or wishing you did.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's fascinating. It's the dangers down there. Is that what kind of drew you to write about about putting your characters in the sea, in Skeleton Sea, because of the dangers lurking down there?
Yeah, partly, yeah. Again, because my family rents a place at the beach every year. It's sort of a family tradition, and so I knew the area very well. Been there, going there for years. Really liked it. And I was looking for, I've had my characters in the mountains and the desert, in winter, in volcanic eruption. Where shall they go next? And I thought, well, take them to the ocean. That's where you're spending a lot of time, it. So then, at first it was that I think I want to bring them to the ocean. And then I just started doing some reading and remembering my experience with the jellyfish and doing a lot of reading about what's going on there. I almost always have a environmental slant to my stories, kind of eco-thrillers, and I found that there's a lot of very scary things going on with the oceans these days. And so it all kind of came together, and I just I put them into a lot of trouble down there. In fact, one of my readers in England wrote to me. He just finished Skeleton Sea, and I guess he lives somewhere near the coast. And he said, that's it. I'm moving inland, and I'm never getting in a bathtub again.
All right, cool. So you're like Steven Spielberg, scaring people from the ocean, from sharks and stuff.
Right.
You mentioned like your research. Is that something that you find challenging when you're bringing your novels to life?
Yes, it is. It is. It's challenging in that I think I have to do, but in any case, I do a lot of research. It's kind of like an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is all that shows. There's a whole lot underneath, and what makes it into the books is a tip. I'm trying, I try very much not to do these core dump science lessons for the reader. I don't want to sit there and lecture anybody. Mm-hmm. I just try to, make it come out as part of the story and the drama. But to get to that point where I have this, this dramatic scene where this particular bit of science or information comes into play, I have to do a lot of research. So it's the challenging part, because I love research, it's so much fun. The challenging part really is deciding how much I can dump of this long explanation of why this is happening and still have it be understandable, believable to a science reader, and interesting to a totally non-science reader. In other words, I would just like the general reader who is looking for a good read not to get bogged down. So that's the hardest part for me on the research. That and and having all this stuff I didn't use and this overwhelming desire to put it all together. Maybe my next book should use radiation poisoning, mercury poisoning, a volcanic eruption, jellyfish, have it all together, except the book would explode.
Yeah, well, you could have like a little novella or something on the stuff that you had to cut out.
That's not a good idea. Yeah, hey, there we go. Outtakes.
Yeah, I thought about that once too, because the editor had me removed. Well, she suggested, and it made sense in the end, so I went with her suggestion. But to maybe take out this scene that I really liked, but didn't really, it wasn't part of the story.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, I don't want to waste that. So someday I'll do something with it.
No kidding. Oh, I've done that many, many times. And not just the question of some sciencey bit, but just a scene. Just a scene that I fall in love with. Like, oh, this is so great. And then an editor or a beta reader says, it does not advance the story. After much whining and yelling and screaming, I yank it out.
Yeah, it's incredible how we become attached to scenes and words, huh?
Yeah, well, there's that old piece of writer's advice. I don't know who said it, but it's called "Kill Your Darlings."
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your work in progress right now. Is it the Forensic Geology series?
Yes, it is. It'll be the next in the series. As I said, I'm toying with this Grand Canyon thing. I actually took a rafting trip down the Colorado through the Grand Canyon. It was terrific. It was so cool. So I'm thinking about sending them there. Another sort of a bucket list trip I took last summer to Machu Picchu.
Nice.
And I thought, there's another cool place that I might send them.
Oh yeah, but I'm in a different country, huh?
Yeah, all my stuff has been set in California so far. Of course, even going to the Grand Canyon, I'm leaving my home state. That's okay. Then again, I might just stick close to home and do another big one up in San Francisco. I'll warn you before I shake up your hometown.
Yeah, there you go. It keeps getting destroyed by the rock and the apes, and it's like, holy cow.
Really? But yeah, I'm currently just in the process. I'm just sifting through ideas and throwing out all sorts of improbable scenarios and seeing what resonates.
Wow, so that's like a real early preview here. So listeners, you heard it here first. Then in if the story ends up in the Grand Canyon or in Peru, Machu Picchu.
Exactly. I can pretty much guarantee it will be someplace with a lot of outdoorsy stuff that has a lot of possibilities for things to go wrong.
So now if the readers are looking for you, could you give us like your website and if you're on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff?
Oh, yeah. Let's see, my website, ToniDwiggins.com. Just type in Toni Dwiggins, all one word, .com. And my Facebook page is Toni Dwiggins Books, all one word, at facebook.com. That's pretty much where I hang out at Facebook. My website is more or less static. I don't have a blog. I do kind of mini blogging at Facebook. I just do little occasional posts and interact with readers, which is great fun. I really like that. I need to do it more often.
Yeah, you mentioned like the reader from England who contacted you. Is that a lot of fun for you, interacting with the readers?
Yes, that too. Now, actually, he contacted me through my webmail, and I get a lot of contact that way. I have a contact form on my website, and I love that. That is so much fun. I've made friends that way. I've gotten a lot of just story critiques and suggestions that way. Learn about people from many different walks of life, different areas in the world. I really do enjoy that. Yeah, I mean, both getting mail from people, and then just people kind of showing up at Facebook, liking the page and joining in, and that's great fun too.
And I will have, for the listeners, I will have links to your website and all that good stuff on if they listen to this on my website, there'll be links somewhere in there.
Okay, cool.
It's kind of weird because I can't see it right now, but
yeah,
probably below there'll be links in there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it basically, if they can spell my bizarre name, then they can find me.
Yeah, there you go. And that's Toni, Toni.
Yes, Toni and Dwiggins.
Anything else you would like to say to our listeners before we conclude the show?
I just would say, there are a lot of things I love about my job. I love the research, love getting into the stories, it's just so involving. I love it when the stories and the characters come alive. I love working in my pajamas, which I do. But the number one best thing about what I'm doing is connecting with readers, sharing what I'm doing with people and having them bring their own experience and expectations and reactions to something that I have created. And it just gives it a new dimension. I mean, that just floors me every time. Oh, really? Every time I hear from a reader, that XYZ they liked or they responded to, or just, I really liked it. I'm just kind of like, wow, thank you.
That's something that's really changed a lot, probably since when you first published, right? Because before it used to be very. I mean, I guess it would have to write a letter back in the day.
Yeah. I think the change. Now that everything is so easy and so prompt. I mean, click, 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 and you're connecting with somebody. It does make it very easy. I think that's a good thing. I think it becomes much more of an interactive experience because, as you know, Alan, we writers are sitting here by ourselves, doing our thing, and you don't often, or I don't, come across people who want to talk about it in real life. I bored my family to tears talking about it. Meeting people who have actually read the books or are interested in doing so is a real privilege.
Thank you very much, Toni, for taking time to be on the show. I really appreciate it. It was very interesting talking to you about your thrillers and the world that you've created.
Well, thank you, Alan. It was great fun, and thanks for having me, and back to work, I guess.
Back to work. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Meet the Thriller Author. You can visit our site at get.thrillingreads.com/podcast for more information on our podcasts. And you can also subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcatcher, like iTunes, the most popular one, of course. Just search for Meet the Thriller Author and you'll find me there. And I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/Meet Thriller Author. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your comments and your feedbacks on the shows. And I'll have a new podcast, a new interview with a thriller author. I'll be posting them every Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. And don't forget to subscribe. And please visit my author website at alanpeterson.com.